This article is from the Reformed Presbyterian Magazine, the November 1838 edition. It's entitled, Facts Concerning the Reformed Religion in Spain. Little is known respecting the early ecclesiastical history of Spain. That the gospel was early preached and that churches were planted in various parts of the country, notwithstanding the persecutions which at intervals prevailed, is about the sum of our knowledge. It has commonly been supposed that the Spanish Church acknowledged the authority of the Pope and the Church of Rome at an early period. This is a mistake. In the 4th century, a national council forbade the worship of images and the use of pictures in the churches, thus censuring two prominent features of the Romish system. The first Roman Mass was celebrated in Spain in about 1071. After this, the papal authority was more and more recognized till it attained its height at about AD 1400. The nation at that period presented a spectacle of slavery to superstition, cruelty, and vice, such as the world has seldom witnessed, the effects of which are mournfully visible to the present day. The Albigenses. In the 11th and 12th centuries, many of those early reformers, the Albigenses, formed settlements in the southern part of France. Thence they passed into the northern parts of Spain, where they seem to have been sometime unmolested. In 1194, Pope Celestine prevailed on King Alphonse II to order all heretics to retire from his dominions. The edict, however, was not enforced. 3 years afterward, it was renewed by Pedro II, his successor, and great pains were taken by the ecclesiastics to promote its execution. But Pedro was favorably inclined toward the Albigenses, and ere long he joined his forces to those of his brother-in-law, Count Raymond, who was fighting in their defense north of the Pyrenees. Raymond fell in the Battle of Muret. In consequence of the events that followed this battle, great multitudes of the Albigenses passed over into Spain, so that by the year 1254 they had grown to such numbers and credit as to have churches in various parts of the kingdom and pastors who boldly preached their doctrines. About this time, the middle of the 13th century, the Pope succeeded in kindling the fires of persecution. The heretics were seized and committed to the flames. Great numbers were thus barbarously murdered. King John II sent his royal musketeers to scour the mountainous regions and drive down their victims like cattle, and deliver them to the Inquisition. After a severe and unrelenting persecution of 2 centuries, most of the Albigenses were completely destroyed or driven from the kingdom. The Inquisition. Soon after the Roman Empire became Christian, penal laws were passed against those who differed in opinion from the received faith. The penalties were mild and, at first, were seldom inflicted. As the church became more corrupt, the bishops insisted on the enforcement of these laws. By degrees, the penalties became more severe, until in the 11th century, death in its dreadful form, that of burning alive, was inflicted on those who departed from the creed of the Catholic Church. The Inquisition as a distinct tribunal was not established till the year 1233. At that time, Pope Gregory IX took from the bishops the power of discovering and bringing to judgment the heretics who lurked in France, and committed the task to the Dominican friars. In consequence, the tribunal was immediately set up in Toulouse, and afterwards in neighboring cities, from which it was introduced into other countries in Europe, especially Spain, where the Dominicans had previously established convents of their order. Before the close of the century, its tribunals were permanently erected in many of the principal towns of the kingdom. When this court had existed for 2 centuries and a half, it underwent what its friends have termed a reform. By this means, it became a still more terrible engine of cruelty. Under this form, it is usually called the Modern Inquisition. The Modern Inquisition was permanently established in 1483. Thomas Torquemada was placed at its head with the title of Inquisitor General. He immediately proceeded to erect tribunals in various parts of Spain. Over the whole was placed the Council of the Supreme, consisting of the Inquisitor General as president and 3 councillors. This council regulated and controlled the inferior tribunals. In 1484, a body of laws for the government of this court appeared. Additions were made to this from time to time, till in 1561 the Inquisitor General Valdez made a revival of the whole code, which was published in 81 articles. This, with a few slight alterations, continues to be the law to the present day. We shall not enter into a detail of the cruelties practiced by this institution. We simply quote the following language of Slaron, the historian of the Inquisition. He was a Catholic, and for some time secretary to the tribunal. Quote, I do not stop to describe the several kinds of torture inflicted on the accused by the order of the Inquisition, this task having been executed with sufficient exactness by a great many historians. On this head, I declare that none of them can be accused of exaggeration." Unquote. In the course of the first year in which it was established, the Inquisition of Seville committed 2,000 persons alive to the flames, burnt as many in effigy, and condemned 17,000 to different penances. According to a modern computation, from the same date to 1517, the year in which Luther made his appearance, 13,000 were burnt alive, 8,700 in effigy, 169,728 were condemned to penance, making in all 191,428 condemned by the several tribunals of Spain in the course of 36 years. There is reason for thinking that this estimate falls much below the truth. Juan Valdez, the first Spanish reformer. The boldness with which Luther attacked the corruptions of the Romish Church soon attracted the attention of all Europe. His opinions soon became widely known. The intercourse between Spain and Germany, in consequence of the advancement of the Spanish monarch Charles V to the imperial throne, made them known in Spain. A reformation in consequence would have been wrought had not the Inquisition stood in the way. All its efforts were tasked to prevent the circulation of the Bible and the writings of Luther, and to discover and bring to condign punishment those who differed from the Church. They did not wholly succeed. The truth made its way to some extent in spite of the rack and flames of the Inquisition. Juan Valdez was the first person, as far as is known, who embraced and was active in spreading the Reformed doctrines in Spain. He was of a good family and received a liberal education. He quitted Spain for Germany with the court of Charles V. He was afterwards sent to Naples as secretary to the viceroy. It has commonly been supposed that he adopted the Reformed opinions in Germany, but some of his writings show that he had rejected many of the papal doctrines before he left Spain. Valdez, though absent from his native land, contributed to the spread of the truth there by his writings. He was a cautious, perhaps a timid man, and did not proceed with a boldness and vigor which was necessary to effect an entrance for the gospel through the terrible barriers that opposed it. A man was needed, courageous enough to raise the standard of truth within the sight of the flames of the Inquisition. Such a man was Rodrigo de Valer.